Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Firm Returns Weekly. Today we're going to have a look at a couple of updates. So I will just quickly share my screen. There's the one. So yeah, today we've got a couple of updates on Warner Bros. Discovery and on tinyBuild. So let's start with Warner Bros. Discovery. And the first bit of news is, as I mentioned last week, we had the release of Blue Beetle prior weekend, and yeah, we can see now how it's done. So it topped the US box office rankings in its opening weekend with domestic ticket sales of $25 million. And it's currently the widest release, showing in 3,871 theaters. So it's actually overtaken Barbie in its opening weekend, as Barbie's now finally, after many weeks of running now, dropped below 4,000. But yeah, obviously $25 million opening weekend's not an incredible start, but it's currently looking fairly comparable to Shazam: Fury of the Gods, as I'm showing in this comparative graph here, which had a similar budget. So Blue Beetle had $120 million estimated budget versus Shazam 2, Shazam: Fury of the Gods, which had $125 million. So yeah, it's not. And if you look at I didn't show it on this graph here, but the performance compared to the original Shazam film, just to give an example, was quite muted, really. The original one, I think it had like an $85 million budget, and this was back in 2019. And I think it did north of, I think it did 50 million or more in its opening weekend. Anyway, it was quite a success, certainly on the basis of a multiple of its production budget, gross revenue. I think it would have been profitable even in the cinema. So the thing with these two movies, like you see Shazam in the worldwide box office only did around about 132 million. And that's completely finished running now, because that was back in March of this year. But yeah, that movie, if you take off so that's the gross revenue, but you've got to take about 50% cut, which is given to cinemas, and then there's got to be a further kind of potentially some further reductions there with payments to actors and whatever kind of stuff as well. So it's kind of you're basically well below what the original production budget is, and it's looking like you might get a similar case for Blue Beetle. Even though it was a good film, I went to see it. Actually, it was objectively good, and it has been well received by critics and audiences alike. So it is it might get. We'll have to have a look after this weekend. It might have got a bit of momentum and bucked the curve that it was it's setting from its first weekend. We'll just have to wait and see. Hasn't got as much competition. Doesn't have as much competition as some of the other, if it had come out a few weeks earlier, competing against some of the other larger movies that would have come out at that time. It's got less competition now. I think the biggest other film coming out is Gran Turismo or something. It's the biggest sort of competitor at the moment. It's coming out this weekend. But anyway, yeah, the point I'm trying to illustrate here, though, with this is, I'm mentioning with this paragraph here, is that even though neither movie's likely to have made a profit from theaters alone, there's still plenty of other monetization windows for it to go through. So the cinemas is just the first phase, and then obviously it can be sold, paid video on demand, or rented and sold, for renting and buying the movies downloads. And then, of course, after that, there's then the licensing and to other streaming partners, streaming platforms, and then, of course, adding it to the catalog of Warner Bros. Discovery's own streaming platforms. So there's these kind of windows for it to move through and to further monetize it. So it's certainly not the end of the road if it doesn't make an immediate profit in the cinema release. The other piece of news I wanted to mention from Warner Bros. Discovery was the announcement that a number of big movie releases are getting pushed back due to the Hollywood actor strikes. And I've put a link here to an article to highlight in the article's headline is that Dune Part 2 is going to be delayed until March next year. It was originally scheduled for release in November. It's getting pushed back till March next year. And it's not the only movie, and it's having knock-on impacts into the scheduling for next year, because there's other movies that were scheduled to release around that sort of time in March that have been pushed back to April and beyond. So it's having knock-ons through the whole release schedule. So there could be a bit of a gap in movie releases. But yeah, something I mentioned here though is that in the short term, the company will likely see a boost to its profits and cash flows as expenses fall, allowing them to accelerate their debt repayment. However, in the medium term, we're likely to see a negative impact as revenues get pushed out further into the future. So yeah, as we saw with the last quarter's earnings release, they'd actually seen a benefit in their cash flows and profits as a result of the strikes. And this was largely just the writer's strikes at this point, but it's obviously they're not paying those salaries and production gets put on hold, especially now the actors are on strike. These films are actually fully stopping production, and that's giving them some quite substantial cost savings. We could be looking in the hundreds of millions of dollars kind of savings range, which is then helping them to further pay on the debt. And it doesn't really have any, well, I mean, it has some impact. And this is why they're delaying the releases, is that a lot of the marketing around a movie involves getting the actors involved in that and getting out there and publicizing the movie and so on. So they don't have the options to do that, which I think is why they're part of the reason they're pushing back movies that have already been made. Like Dune Part 2, I'm pretty confident will have already been completed. We're just a couple of months away from its intended release. Well, 3 or 4 months intended release date. But so you'd expect it to have been pretty well polished off and not any more filming going on in it, at least. But if the big lead actors can't publicize the movie, and part of the appeal is the star power of people like Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya, who were the two fairly young lead actors in the film, along with loads of others, Josh Brolin, Christopher Walken as well, and various other fairly big names. And if they can't actually help to publicize the movie, they can't go out and do interviews and sort of help to go to premieres, generate hype and so on. It takes a lot of the wind out of the sails of the movie. So they're going to push these. This is why they've made the decision to push it back. But yeah, we'll have to see what kind of long-term impact that has. And hopefully these things get resolved fairly quickly and they'll be able to use some of the cost savings in the short term to accelerate their debt repayment, and that will have benefits down the line. It'll help to offset the medium-term impacts. So moving on to tinyBuild. This week, tinyBuild attended Gamescom, which is the world's largest gaming event, which I think I saw something about. This was from 2018 or something, but it was like 370,000 people attended it back in 2018. So I'm guessing it's similar or more Now, and this is a game event in Cologne, Germany, and at the event it released new trailers and began showcasing both Streets of Rogue 2 and Pigeon Simulator. So I don't know whether there were other games that were publicized or had demos or whatever at the event. I know from the Versus Evil side there was Broken Roads. The game was being they had a demo available for people to try there and publicize and so on. And that game is probably the highest potential game at the moment, certainly from its wish list rankings and what have you, for the Versus Evil publishing arm of tinyBuild. Yeah, on the tinyBuild side, I think these are the two that they certainly mentioned, that people who didn't attend the event, who were just following along what they were publishing on Twitter or YouTube, like I was, could see. And it had Streets of Rogue 2 in particular had a pretty incredible response. I think the game, they put out an official reveal trailer, and there was lots of other, there's quite a lot of other pub marketing and so on going on, but they put out an official reveal trailer, and that trailer within the first 3 days had 550,000 views on YouTube, and I don't know what it is now, but I'm assuming it's higher still. And where the game had previously been in something like, I think at the time I was talking about before, it was like 137th place or something like that in the wishlist rankings. It then had gone down to 120, and then at the time I was writing this, it had gone all the way down to 106th place. So it's absolutely flown in the the wish list has grown phenomenally, and it's and it's looking very promising now. And I don't know what I haven't really I wasn't looking at the wishlist rankings for some of the other games, like I don't know what kind of what the wishlist looked like for something like Potion Craft, which is a game with similar amount of enthusiasm from the audience before its release. I don't know whether that got into the top 100, but not. But I know that things like I Am Future, which is a very good release, and was in, I think, 140 something rather place in the wishlist rankings. Certainly nowhere near the top 100, but was still within that range. And then when Punch Club 2 came out, which also was a very strong release, and we know we have the sales figures from at least the first 2 weeks into its release. We know what the sales figures were from that article that Alex put out, CEO. So, and we know that was in something like 220 something place in the wishlist ranking. So to be in 106th place and potentially even getting into the, let me just have a quick look, in fact, see where we are now. But to be able to get into the top 100 for Streets of Rogue 2 would be pretty incredible. Let's have a quick look. $105th. So it's actually gone up even since I wrote this, and I only wrote this yesterday. So we've jumped up another place. And then if we look at Broken Roads as well, just for comparison, I think this is now 159th. So it's climbing. From, I think it was in 160 something, 167, 168. So it's making good progress. So yeah, that's looking very, very promising for that, for Streets of Rogue 2, for that launch. And then something in the Pigeon Simulator didn't garner quite as much hype, but what was interesting with this one was and it's nowhere near as high up in the wishlist rankings either. But I think the interesting thing with Pigeon Simulator is its audience is really going to be aimed at consoles. And what makes me say this, and why 664th place in the Steam wishlist ranking, it's quite a way back. But what's interesting about it is that it's Xbox Game Pass did a tweet, which I think had some ungodly number of impressions, like close to 800,000 impressions or something, high 700, 800,000 impressions, and 4K plus likes. And they announced that it's going to be on Xbox Game Pass. So obviously in June, the end of June, we had the trading update that's talking about cutting of platform revenues. So I don't know whether this was this is an example of some platform revenue. So I don't know whether this is new platform revenue, a new deal that's been signed, or an existing deal contract that's being honored, or what. But it does mean that we're most likely that we're going to be seeing some platform revenue in the next year. And I think this is coming out in 2024. Both these games, mentioned, were announced as coming out next year, presumably in the first half. And I think Broken Roads, which is the other one I mentioned, is coming out versus Evil. It's coming out this year. There's a couple of other ones coming out this year and so on, but they're not ones that are being really marketed at this event. So that's quite positive that we're actually potentially going to be still seeing some. It's not going to be a complete platform revenue going down to zero. And as we know, platform revenue made up about 20 something around $20 million contribution last year. So it's a pretty considerable amount. So hopefully we're still getting some. It's not going to be cut down to zero. We're going to be getting at least a portion of that still coming through. So one final thing I wanted to mention on tinyBuild was that I had a Zoom call with a lady called Rebecca Carr, who's an analyst at Progressive Research. And they're a sell-side analyst firm, and they've been commissioned by the company, by tinyBuild, to provide ongoing coverage of the company. And they did, and she's done an initial report, which I've read. It's freely available because it's being the report is being funded by tinyBuild. So you don't have to pay to access it. That's what I mean by that. It's not being paid by the readers. And this report went into a lot of detail because they are being funded by the company. They don't do things like buy or sell recommendations or target price or stuff like that. They're just trying to give you a rounded and balanced picture of the company, the state of its finances, what have you. And they give you some. So there was some forecasts in there about various financial figures and metrics, like what they think revenue, adjusted EBITDA, or whatever is going to be. So but I found it what I found particularly interesting from it was the competitor analysis. She did a really good breakdown of let me just see if I can I probably can't, because I think I'm just sharing this one monitor, one window. But basically she does a breakdown of the competitors, and she sort of does things like the percentage of their revenue that's come from own IP, percentage of their revenue that's come from the back catalog, and does this comparison, side-by-side comparison with 5 or 6 different competitors. I think it was 5 or 6. Certainly, it presents in a table and some other breakdowns on it. And I thought that was very, very good work there, and very interesting to read. And you could really see how I think Team 17 was one of the comparison companies, and they had similar levels of sales from the back catalogue, but their own IP stuff wasn't as high as tinyBuild, and most of the others were just way lower in terms of own IP and back catalogue sales. So I think Devolver Digital, Frontier Developments, there was a few other companies that were included in the study. Yeah, but it's really interesting, and it covers some other things that I haven't covered in my reports, my analysis. So I do recommend giving it a look. And I certainly felt that it was pretty balanced, and like I say, there was no like an opinion presented either way, whether it's the buyer or seller or whatever. And I had a very interesting discussion with Rebecca, close to 2 hours. I wasn't expecting to go on so long, but we just easy conversation about the company and various other her background and so on. It's very good. So I'm hoping to keep these lines of communication open with Rebecca, and we can get some continued analysis from her, and I'll try and link to those where I can. But one thing I wanted to mention here as well is that you can go on their website, and if you want to access it, you can get it for free, like I said, but you have to sign up you have to put your details in to their website, and it means you'll get ongoing coverage from them. You'll get the new as they do new reports and so on around the time like earnings come out and things like that. They'll be doing updates, and you'll get those into your inbox maybe. But if you don't want to do that, but you do want to read it, I've been given a copy that I've been given permission to distribute. So if you want to have a look at that copy, just drop me an email, which you can find on the about page of my website. And then I'll just send you a copy, no problems. So the final thing I wanted to mention is that I've started a new podcast or a new show entitled Firm Discussions, in collaboration with the Punch Card Investing YouTube channel. And this is going to feature a series of interviews with other analysts covering a different company each episode. And the first one, I actually spoke with Spencer Garnett's of Breedy Capital, which is a guy I think I've mentioned here before. And he's also written a write-up on tinyBuild, so I thought that'll make an interesting discussion to do the inaugural episode as a discussion on tinyBuild. So that's what we'd like to say. If you want more tinyBuild, then that's an interesting discussion, and you hear a bit of a back and forth between me and Spencer on the company. And because it is a company that I own or have here, it was probably a more balanced conversation in terms of how much time we both spent talking. But normally it would be me interviewing somebody else and I'd be asking questions, but most of the talking would be the guest. So that's it'd be a little different and that it'd be more like the interview I did with Chit Chat Money on Nintendo. That's probably a better example of what the standard kind of format is going to be. But to give you a bit of background, if you haven't encountered punch card investing before, it started off as a five guys who had YouTube channels who were investing with Tom, Jack Dovley, Karan Ganani, Brad Kellner, and investing with Frank, who I think was also Frank Lone Wolves. He had a Substack and so on. And I think as I understand now, and when it started off being a weekly live stream discussion show on a weekend normally every week, and now it's some of the other guys who were doing it have not been able to. They've had other commitments and so on. They haven't been able to commit to keep doing the show, and so struggling to get the numbers to people just to come on and do the weekly live show. And then I think now, as I understand it, Jack Duffley has taken over management of the whole channel and is trying to expand the content offering. And as part of this, he's bringing on new. He's still got some of the original guys like Tom and Karan and so on that are going to come onto the from time to time onto the live show. But as I understand, well, yeah, what's happening now is that Jack is trying to get a few other kind of individual shows or segments or whatever for the channel to bring in additional content and things like, in the case of my stuff, it's stock analysis, discussions with other analysts, and there's another Contrarian Corner is the other show that's been listed by a guy called Mike. I can't remember his surname, but yeah, his stuff's been good. He's done an episode on can't remember now. It was a cable company anyway, I believe. That was I think a Liberty Media, Liberty Global, something like that. But yeah, so he's doing another show, similar stuff, but I think it's largely him doing the analysis, and there'll be once a month or something, and mine trying to keep it to every 2 weeks, but obviously scheduling of guests and so on does throw a spanner in the works sometimes with things. But yeah, it's I've got some more guests lined up, so you get some more episodes coming out from that. But yeah, so that's what you can expect. And if you want to go over and subscribe to that YouTube channel, that would be great. You know, if you're interested in any of this stuff, the live show, these dedicated stock analysis shows, yeah, you'll find some good content over there. So anyway, I think that pretty much wraps up this week. Yeah. And so yeah, I'll come back next week and we'll maybe get another update on Blue Beetle, see how it did on its second weekend, if we did see any bump. Yeah, and see whatever else the week holds. I'm currently in the process of going through and working on an update for Aviva, so that as I've mentioned in other weeks, so that will be coming out hopefully in the next few months. Anyway, until next time, I will see you then.